I had a blast talking with Cortney Newmans, a real estate investor and influencer based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Courtney bought his very first multifamily property about a year and a half ago in the dead middle of the pandemic. What a time, but it has worked out well for him. In this episode, Courtney shares with me the pains, successes, and downright tough lessons he learned while making the jump from a single family investor to a multifamily focused investor. We talked about completely adjusting your contingency planning when moving from SFR to multifamily. We talked about why the Atlanta market is on absolute fire with no signs of slowing down, and why large unit multifamily ground up construction is just something that Courtney doesn't have a desire to get into anytime soon. Welcome to the Real Estate of Things. I'm your host, Dalton Elliott. Today, we're going to be talking about making the jump from single family investing to multifamily property investing. I'm joined by one of the most well-known people in the real estate investment space, Cortney Newmans. He's a real estate investor, financier, social media star. Courtney, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Dalton. I really appreciate the time and the invitation to come on to the Real Estate of Things.
For sure. Courtney, I have traveled all over the country with you. I've known you probably a little over 6 years at this point, and it is absurd how big your social network is. Every city, Atlanta, Miami, New York, Vegas, Beverly Hills, LA, the list goes on. You know everyone everywhere. The first question I have is, how can I be like Courtney? What's the secret?
It's not a secret. I think when I first joined the industry and came into it, I have literally no clue about real estate, and I knew coming in with Lima One Capital. So if let's rewind to 2012. So I graduated University of Georgia in 2011. And I came out probably at one of the worst times because the job industry was not the best. And I had a marketing degree and an econ degree. So I had no clue of what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to get into real estate, but I didn't know my segue in. I thought, hey, I got a marketing degree. I get to go work for Fortune 500 Coca-Cola. Things didn't pan out that way. So my first job out of college was doing merchant services for a company in Atlanta called Payscape Advisors. And I think that's how I really learned the value of selling and going door to door business sales. And that's probably how I got my chops and really learned the business and networking and really really trying to feel that opportunity of really building your social network. And then my next job was business banking. I enjoyed that somewhat because I got to learn the finance side of the business, but it wasn't enjoyable to the point where it was a passion that, hey, I love getting up every morning to do it. And so my start with Lima One is I actually applied for a loan before I even thought about working for the company. I had that plug in my mind, hey, I cannot sit behind a desk and do a 9 to 5 every day. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't in my nature. I wanted to get out and be around people.
Mm-hmm. That makes complete sense. And before I forget, you went to UGA, you mentioned. You played football there, right?
Yeah. I don't know if saying I played football, I was on the team, but I was there.
There you go. Hey, that counts. So that's a super interesting fact about you, man. So you fast forward, you get into the real estate space on the financing side. When did you do your first flip?
So my first flip, I started with Lima One in 2012, and then I did not take the jump to do my first flip until 2015.
Okay.
And I think the reason, like I applied for the loan back in 2012, but I just never took that leap because I kind of just seen what my clients were doing, learned from their mistakes, seeing what areas they were investing in, and just pretty much took it all in. So by the time I was able to do my first flip, I didn't want to make any mistakes. Fast forward, even with my first flip, even knowing what I've known 3 years in the industry, I still make all the mistakes in the world. So I tell everybody, you just cannot just plan for what you see on the flip. It's always going to be surprises when it comes to doing a flip. But I would rather learn from the world of hard knocks than just sitting back and thinking I can get it from a book.
Yeah, it's something about, the classroom setting, right? You're working with clients in the more academic setting where you're seeing the mistakes made, but it's not really directly impacting you. versus getting out there and it's your money on the line, it's your tail on the line, a completely different story. And I'm really interested as we chat today to learn about how the stakes change whenever you move from single family to multifamily. So, just recently, it's late 2021 now. You purchased your first multifamily property, right?
Yep, my first multifamily property was purchased mid pandemic
Yep. Beautiful
in May
time.
of in May of 2020. So what
Okay.
had happened was I wanted to flip. So I flipped between 5 to 10 houses a year. And I always knew that, hey, I wanted to get into passive income and wanted to be a legacy where I can get up to, let's say, 500 to 1,000 doors. That's always been my passion and where I wanted to get to. I knew I didn't want to flip. I never wanted to be the flipper that's flipping 100 houses a year. I just seen the toll that it takes on people and the stress and the I would say staff that you have to maintain that type of business. And I've always seen the sweet spot of doing flips is like somewhere between that 20 to 50 range where you can handle it and you maybe can have one or two people on your staff. But hey, I work for Lima One. That is a full-time job in itself. So I got my 9 to 5 and then I got my side hustle. But I love both because they're intertwined from day to day. And so purchasing that property, I started looking at that property in December of 2019. So
Okay.
I knew I wanted to get into multifamily, and I had no clue of what I was doing, but I knew I had to take a leap of faith, just like I did with a fix and flip.
Yeah. So what take me back to whenever you have that decision point of, okay, I'm going to finally chew off my first multifamily project. Looking back, what were the differences between all of the SFR deals you had done previously, all of the research before you get into a property? How's that different from the multifamily side of the fence?
So I would have to give all credit due to two guys. One is Brian Calton, that's in the office. He was our multifamily guru. And
Yeah.
then the second is Chad Musgrove. He works for Lumen out of Miami, Florida. So
Yeah.
literally, me and Brian were charged of trying to develop our multifamily program. What was it, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
And I had no clue of multifamily, no clue how to underwrite it, no clue how to look at it. And I think what you have to look at on the multifamily side versus single family side is the value component. It's really looking at, hey, how do I create value on the multifamily side versus single family side? Single family side is all the bells and whistles, hey, stainless steel appliances, all this the lighting, the open concept, all of that to be able to create the value that you're going to a homeowner. More so on the multifamily side is, hey, you really have to look at your bottom line because your income statements and everything there to reduce expenses. That's how you drive the value on that property on that side. And so for me, it's like I needed to look for a property where my strong suit was, hey, I have construction people. I want to really add value to that property by bringing in the construction, but also it has room to grow from increasing the rents and everything like that. So with the tutelage of Brian and Chad and really understanding how to underwrite a multifamily, I didn't take the plunge until I knew I had a surefire deal that, hey, if everything goes wrong, as long as I add value to the construction, I can raise the rents and it's not so more so dependent on the financial with all of the property and just trying to reduce expenses on that side.
Yeah, a big takeaway there on my mind is no matter how big you get in this space, you always have to surround yourself with people who, uh, maybe not even know more than you, but they know more than you in a specific subset, right? Because multifamily is so different from the SFR side of the fence. When, you mentioned the product launch of multifamily a few years back, it was a completely different language to me,
Yes.
the multifamily side of the fence versus SFR. And I still, admittedly have so much to learn there. It's just a completely different beast. So that
Yeah.
the relationship
It's
side is like,
Yeah, it's like no one knew what an NOI was. Like I literally had to sit down and say, Brian, like explain to me how to calculate it. It was all foreign knowledge, and this is coming from someone that went to UGA and we went in finance classes, we're in accounting classes, but this is all foreign language to me as well.
So buying your first multifamily, a huge piece is find somebody who's done it before and talk to them, right?
Yeah, or surround yourself with very smart guys that know what the heck they're doing.
Yeah, that's sage advice. So you mentioned mistakes earlier, right? Those happen all the time, and so many unintended things. You can't anticipate every single thing in a transaction, getting into a property. That the magnitude of that just has to go up higher and higher the more units you have in a single project. So
Definitely.
you've had the property for a bit. What would you do differently, or what would you what mistakes do you look back, kind of kick yourself in the tail for, or mistakes that you're like, hey, this was just going to happen, it was inevitable, and we just have to put our shoulder down and forge ahead?
Yeah, I think I put myself in the back against the wall because four of my close buddies, uh, they invested in the property with me, and so it's like, hey, it's not only my money at risk, it's their money at risk. And so I took every leverage point of what I learned in single family as reserves, looking at, hey, what's the worst case scenario with this property? Can we get out and sell it at a cost basis where we get all our money back? And so I think I learned that, hey, whatever's going to go wrong, something's always going to go wrong. And with this particular project, I purchased it for 1.45, and the renovation cost initially that I thought was going to be 250,000 ended up being 375,000. But I planned for that. I knew, hey, something is always going to go wrong, especially like you have it on the single family side. So I made sure I raised enough capital to be able to support that and support me taking that loan 2 years all the way throughout, where we don't have to default. I don't have to go to the piggy bank and go into my retirement money or anything like that. Because I was just, I think, and then the pandemic also made it where, hey, I got to be a little bit more conservative. So raise more capital. You're going to pay more money on the capital that you're going to raise, but I would rather be secure in that I have that money available, and then we're not scrambling trying to find that money later on down the line. So I think that was one thing that I know. Hey, going to a project, always raise more money than you need for that project. I would say probably 15% more than you need just to have it. Hey, you're going to pay for that cost of capital because it's equity, but it's better to do it then than trying to go back to your investors and raise it then. And then the second thing is thoroughly uh, question your property management company. I think what happened with the property management company, I didn't really know the ins and outs of the day to day of what they were supposed to be doing, and so really learning, hey, what is the staff is doing? What are their daily operations? What am I paying payroll for? And literally learning those things and understanding those things when it comes to property management, because it's the key. That's the key driver to the multifamily business of raising the rents and doing it in a timely manner and doing it fast, where you can turn over that money and get your money back to your investors. That is all about speed, and it's all about those increasing your NOI basis. So I think those are the things that I learned from really that first 6 months. It's like I had no clue. It's like everything was hitting me at once. It's like, hey, I work from Lima One from 5 in the morning to 6, and then at night from like 6 to 11, I'm looking at the multifamily project. I'm looking at the expense reports. I'm looking at what I'm doing here and saying, hey, how can I get better? How can I make my operations better? How can I make the processes better, where everyone is communicating effectively and they know what they need to do? The easy part for me, coming from the fix and flip world, was the construction management. That was the easy part. But learning the other components of the business, that is really where I had to cut my teeth.
Interesting. A lot in there. So the reserve piece, that makes a lot of sense, right? It's better to pad it a little bit just to be safe and conservative, as opposed to putting yourself so tight and thin to where you're going to have to go back potentially to people to, or even in your own side to earmark more money that you just didn't expect. Better to have it and not have to use it than have to go try to raise more. So that's a really big piece. So interesting, the construction management side of it. Construction's construction, timber's timber, nails are nails. It's just the number of units. That's the only thing that's really different. But the nitty gritty piece. So it's really like all in the paperwork side of it, right? And projections and the property management side. That's a big one too in the multifamily space. That I feel like it's a lot more cookie cutter on. Now, granted, you have plenty of great property management, and
Yes.
you have the opposite that's true in the SFR side. But I just feel like on the multifamily side of the fence, property management I guess because it's always going to be in place. Like you're not going to self-manage 500 to 1,000 units whenever
Yeah.
you get to your ball or your field of dreams, Courtney. Right. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the property management side and making the transition from SFR to multi. What's different about it? What are you on the lookout for, especially forward flow as you're looking to go from 32 units to 1,000?
So I think I never wanted to be the person to hold single family rentals. And I know that's against the philosophy because I literally finance hundreds of them on a yearly basis.
Yeah, yeah.
But my philosophy has always been flip, 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 save that money, and then put into multifamily. The reason is I see that multifamily you can scale and is more so everything is in one spot. So this is my philosophy. I don't want to be able to, and it may sound bougie, it may sound like off the wall, but it's like I don't want to buy $150,000 house to cash flow $300 a month on it. It's like I got to
Right.
put down $25,000 and I got to cash flow $300 a month. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it never did, and I just cannot get with it.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, hey, instead of me rushing trying to get rentals on a single family space and do the Burr method, hey, I know what the Burr method is. I put it on social media. Hey, it's for people who feel that they want to do the Burr method and they get tax advantages for that, but it's just not for me. My motto is flip, 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 and then save that money and then pour it into a multifamily project. And so I finally got to the position where, hey, I had a substantial amount of money where I could go into a multifamily project, and it was just the time to do that. And the reason I wanted to have a multifamily project is like, instead of me having 36 houses scattered all over Macon and Atlanta, I would rather have 36 units all in one spot. And hey, I have one property manager there, I have one maintenance man there, and they can take care of all the needs. And so I feel like that is more for me a scalable business and buying multifamily product or buildings versus me trying to go get 500 to 1,000 rentals covered over 4 or 5 states. It's just I just couldn't deal with that headache. And then the thing is, when you look at single family, it's like one AC unit can cause me to in one house can cause me to lose my whole year on single family. So when I look at something just as simple as that, I was like, for me, that's just not a good investment for me. Just for me. I don't preach and say it for anyone else. I have to keep saying that. But for me, it just didn't feel right to be a good investment on my side. As on a
No, that
rental.
no, it makes complete sense. So geographically, you kind of mentioned, SFRs scattered across 5 states or so. Just that scenario, if you have that many SFRs on the multifamily side, as you look ahead, going from 32 units on up, what does that look like? Are you envisioning kind of all in the and I don't even know if I asked your property, your multifamily property is somewhere in the Atlanta area. Where is it?
It's in Macon, Georgia, so it's from my
Okay,
hometown.
got it.
So
There you
my
go.
first multifamily is in my hometown, so I love
That's a cool thing.
it.
That's really cool. So do you
Yeah,
you think are you really just looking in Georgia? You think you're going to end up whenever you hit your goal, all units are going to be in Georgia, or do you think you're going to be seeking opportunities outside, or just always keep an open mind? What's the strategy there?
I think like multifamily is such a competitive market right now. Literally, and I just closed on a 72 unit in Macon probably about 2 months ago, and it's just so competitive. And I think I have to look in secondary markets outside of Atlanta because I think Dennis Sterner from Lafayette Communities, he said this.
Mhm.
He said, "Who has access to the cheapest capital will win all the time." And so right now, I don't have access to the cheapest capital out there. I'm
Yeah.
still paying double digit prefs. So anybody want to come invest with me, please let me know. I'm still paying that right now. I haven't got to the single digit prefs because I just don't have that experience and just not be able to scale up to get the institutional capital to back me. But I think I have to have an open mind to buying in other markets. And the thing is, with multifamily, it's a rinse and repeat product.
Mhm.
Literally, I have my flooring that I use. I have the same faucets, the same lighting, and I can rinse repeat the same paint color. And I may change the exterior color of the buildings to give it a more modern look. But it's literally rinse and repeat for every product that you put in, and just knowing what market you have to go in. And in some cases, it's just really going in and painting, and then you can raise the rents internally just over time. And some you're going to need a heavy lift, but it is so much easier than a single family flip. Like it's not as much brain damage. And so, but going back to your question, sorry, going off on a tangent.
No, no.
Going back to your question, I think I have to have an open mind, and I think where I'm going to be able to have my success is like I'm in Atlanta. I can find anything that I could afford, and that the money I could raise to be able to go that route because I'm competing with all the funds, all the institutional capital because they want all the product in Macon. So for me, I have to go to secondary and third markets where hey, it's going to take a heavier lift, but that's my expertise because I'm coming from the single family world to the multifamily world. I'm not afraid of the construction component. For those guys that have the access to the cheaper capital, they're just going in and like we said earlier, pretty much looking at the performance and looking at your NOIs and your income statements and saying, hey, what can I do on that side with my cheap capital to raise the rents and then raise the performer and where it looks better in a longer term and can get those yields that they're looking for. So I think that is the difference for me where I'd rather do a heavier lift project, and those usually heavier lift projects are on the outskirts or in the secondary to tertiary markets.
Yeah, and do you see kind of across the board a little less competition there because people are a little more put off by the thought of having to go in and do, even if it's not extensive work, but doing work across the majority of the units? Do you think that's
Yeah,
a pretty big, call it scare off for most people?
I think it's a scare off for people that are not like I think your big institutional
Hmm.
fund guys. I think that's a scare off for them because they don't want to have the operations to be able to go somewhere like that and do it. So it's like, can you get the staff to be able to do that in Atlanta? Yes, but could you get the staff to do that in somewhere like Macon, Georgia, or Tifton, Georgia? It's kind of going to be hard to do that. So I think yes, it's less competition, but it's still heavy competition because the asset class of multifamily has really it's proven out to be one of the best safest asset classes even coming throughout the pandemic. So people are chasing that yield and really want to put their money into that product. So even though I'm going outside of the norm and looking in different states and looking in those secondary markets, it's still a lot of competition out there.
Is that competition going to slow down, or do you think it's really just kind of reared its head for the first time and it's going to keep on getting more and more competitive?
I see it's going to get more and more competitive because I
Yeah.
think as we have inflation going on and the home prices is no inventory for home prices, so people have to have a place to live. And so if you don't have the inventory on the SFR side for rents, then if you see your rents are growing on the multifamily side, I think people are going to keep putting their money into those assets, and it's going to continue to grow. So I think it's a catch-22 because SFR is probably affecting the world of multifamily almost.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've done some new construction. Um, do you envision that being part of your multifamily strategy? Do you think you're
I
going to
am.
get into double digit multifamily builds?
That is very scary. It's something that I thought of and something that I want to do. Uh, it's just that is just a whole different world, and I have no clue of how to underwrite it, what to look at, what's my cost to build. So if I look at a project, it's going to have to be something very very small scale. I would think somewhere between 10 to 30 units before we go trying to do 100 unit new multifamily build. And the thing is, for me, just like our product base at Lima One, we really love workforce housing and providing
Mhm.
that housing for the I would say for the working class. I think that is my strategy on the multifamily side. Hey, I want to be able to take a product that has been untouched for 10, 15, 20 years and bring it to today where the working force can have a product where they're proud to come home to every day. And it's not something that always needs fixing, not something that looks outdated, but it's something they're going to take pride for, and they maybe may pay a little bit more premium for that product. So I've always taken that approach. So that's I think that's where I want to be because once you get into new building, you have no choice but to, unless you're getting tax incentives or getting tax credit deals, which I have no clue about. I know about them, but I don't have no clue of how to even raise the financing for that. But if you're doing that, you're more so looking at a Class A product where you're going to have to demand the higher rents.
That makes sense. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, if you look at the interior of a unit, SFR, or the inside of a unit in a 100 door project, it's going to look similar, right, from a rehab standpoint. But if you zoom out and you look at a single family home versus a 100 unit complex, like construction on that just has to be a completely different beast. So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
understandable. Yeah.
What do so you've knocked the dust off. You're now a big time multifamily
I'm
investor.
not a big time. I only got 150. Not big time. Not yet.
I know. So you are, how have you changed your strategy, right? From property number one to now you have a good number of units under your belt. How's your strategy different across the board, from scoping out properties, active management? How's it changed? Things that you maybe didn't do or did do the first go around, that as you've kind of advanced in the multifamily world, you've changed.
I think it's really trying to have your operations and SOPs in order where, hey, I'm not having to spend as much time and being more labor intensive in the projects. And so really learning from that first project, I know, hey, this is how this side is going to go. So I know how to plan out what needs to happen, what we need to do in units. Hey, we may not have to do as much extensive renovation to be able to obtain a rent. So I think going in, I thought, hey, I just got to redo this whole unit, and then that's going to command this rent. No, really understanding and walking the product and say, hey, this needs to be changed. This needs to be changed. This can stay. We can resurface this. Just really understanding how to cut the expenses really helped out a lot. And then also being able to plan out and staff 3 to 4 months in advance, really getting with the property management company and say, hey, let's look at the rent roll. Who's coming up for renewal? Can we increase these? Can we increase the rents on this property without having to lift a finger on it?
All right, Courtney. So, we will not go down the COVID rabbit hole. We'll just scratch at the surface for a second. I have one question about it. How's that changed your approach on the real estate investing side? This thing came out of nowhere in March of last year. Us being on the financing side of the fence, you and I saw how quickly things changed. It was over the course of a couple of days that everything was fine on the lending side, and then capital markets just froze. So something that nobody really had a great plan for. The last pandemic was 100 years ago, so we thought we were good and could handle anything, but this knocked everybody in the teeth. How has it changed your habits, your investing strategy? What do you do differently now versus kind of pre-COVID?
I think pre-COVID, I was very cautious then, and then
Mm-hmm.
post-COVID, I'm kind of a little bit more, I would say per se, aggressive. And
Really?
the reason, and that's on the SFR side. So one, I'm
Okay.
not going to buy a property with a tenant, and I just, hey, we got a rent moratorium, and we understand, hey, you have to do what you have to do. I'm just not going down the rabbit hole, and I'll leave it at that. but
Sure.
but I think because it's such low inventory, me going back to my economic background is it's simple economics. There's low inventory, rates are at an all time low. For me, it's like, hey, how do you lose? And then also with the momentum that Airbnb has going on. So single family wise, I invest here in Atlanta. Like I can buy 10, 20 deals a month if I wanted to. I don't have the capital to do that. Don't have the desire to do that. But I see good deals all the time, and I
Mhm.
know, hey, if this is a rehab that I can get in and out of in 4 months, I want to do it. And if it can be in the first time home buyer market, there's no inventory for that. So I can get out of this house. And for me in Atlanta, if it's under 375 ARV for home buyer market, it's gone. I can renovate it, get it done, and I know I can sell that property with what I know I can do to a renovation. So I'm probably aggressive there. I don't want to buy rehabs because it's not as desirable as new construction. So I'd rather do new constructions where I don't have to be as labor intensive, where I'm not managing the projects, having to call up and do it with the contractor. Hey, I design it, give them the plan. Hey, you run to your races. The hardest thing is just getting the getting the permits for those projects right now and going through UDC because No one's working. Like
Yeah.
just the cab is closed down. City of Atlanta is closed down. Like I have a love hate relationship with your local municipalities, but hey, it comes with the business. If it was easy, every one of their mother would be doing it. So I think I'm more aggressive on the new construction side versus the rehab side because I think throwing up a house and being able to do that, but you cannot really build affordable housing, which that's my passion, which I really want to
Mhm.
build. So right now, my new builds are probably somewhere between 450 to 700,000, and then you just really have to understand what that market desires and give them what they desire. But in pre-selling those, we have had no problem doing that.
Got it.
So I'm more aggressive on the new construction side. To answer your
Got
question.
it. Makes sense. Atlanta. Talk to me about the Atlanta market. Right. I love Atlanta. I'm 2.5 hours away from there. Love it every time I'm in town. It's growing. It's growing out a ton too. Right. So
Yeah,
talk to me about just kind of the hot markets. You're in Atlanta area, so just talk to me about what you're seeing there.
yeah. So mid pandemic, let's just give. I panicked. So I was like, man, I got W-2 income, but I got a recently born son, so I don't know what's gonna happen. So I was like, let me go buy a house. And so me having to go buy a house like mid pandemic, like it wasn't mid pandemic. I would say probably April, May. Like as soon as that happened, I was like,
Oh
let
yeah.
me go find a new construction house and buy it in a good school district. I did it, put it on the contract. Fast forward a year later, I have $100,000 equity in that house. So it's one of the I say best decisions I made out of panic. But if
Yeah.
I would have waited, I probably would have never been able to find another house because you're going to compete with these people and be in the bidding war. So I went ahead and took that leap of faith then. And so I think, and that particular house is in Decatur, so it's near downtown Decatur, and I think you have just a lot of trendy areas where hey everything has been in the city, but I think people are moving outside the city. So I think you have to look at what your family wants and their needs, because I've always had this philosophy: buy good school districts and buy location. So if you can buy good school districts and buy the location, you're always going to win because there's always going to be a demand for that product in those areas. And then, so the hot areas that I see right now where people are moving to, Decatur is still hot. In town, in any areas that's close to the city center, it's still hot because we have low inventory. And I think Atlanta is moving towards that modern build market. So I have like 3 or 4 modern builds that I'm doing. That has never resonated with me, but it's grown on me lately with the modern builds and really looking like what they've been doing in Los Angeles for the last 5 to 7 years. It's now more so coming to our market because we have always been a traditional modern farmhouse, your ranch style builds, just more traditional here. But just seeing that you have transplants from different areas, and that's what they want. They want that more modern style house. I think that's becoming more of the norm here as well. And so places where you can do those infill new construction and do a modern build is going to sell, and those are selling quickly. And then I would say outside the city that people probably personally have not say, hey, I want to move there, but you have areas like College Park, East Point, and those ones that are by the Hateville that are by the airport, having that relatively to the airport where people can get in and travel and get to the airport within 10 minutes. I think that has been something that has been good as well. And then the suburbs are just always been on fire. Like I said, your Gwinnett's, your Cobb County, where you have good school districts. So I think that's a breakdown of the Atlanta market itself.
That's great. I was talking with a real estate investor in Atlanta when I was down there a few weeks ago, and he said that, you know, so many real estate markets are on fire, right? Just nationwide. But one of the, call it gasoline on the fire parts in the Atlanta area is that they're seeing a big influx of people from out of state moving into Atlanta, moving into the South. Don't have to worry about the crazy winter weather in other places. Cost of living, way better than if you're in LA, right? So seeing Northeast and West Coast folks kind of ditching that life and moving to the South, and Atlanta is a major hub, if not the major hub in the Southeast. Are you seeing that too? Do you think that's having a big effect on pushing prices up as well?
Yeah, yeah, I think that pushes price. 'Cause you got to think if you have a not trying to be funny. You have a $400,000 house here in Atlanta.
Mhm.
That's almost like a mansion. You go put that same $400,000 house in LA, it's a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Just me being honest. It's a 2-1 that's probably 900 square feet that needs to be torn down. So when someone comes from New York or Atlanta, and you say, "Hey, I have this brand new home that's 2,800 square feet, bells and whistles in there, open concept," that is like just a shot in the bucket for them. It's like, "Hey, I want that product," because you can't even get that square footage of space in New York, and that's affordable to them, because that same product, a $700,000 house, is probably like a $2.2 million house there in New York or LA. So I think that's the difference, because the mindset is where someone has always been in this market and they feel, "Hey, oh my God, I'm getting priced out of the market and this house is just too expensive." But you got to think about the affordability factor. That same $700,000 house with a 2.5 interest rate, you can afford that same house with a 4.5 interest rate. So you really have to look at those factors and really understand what you can buy and and how much you can get for the dollars you can buy with the low interest rate market.
Yeah, you brought up interest rates, so I'm gonna force you to prognosticate on this. So,
Oh no.
so
It goes into the government realm. We're trying to stay away from that.
It's true. That's true. It's going to be interesting to watch, because that has played a huge part, right? And it's been weird, definitely weird. But money has not been this cheap in a long time for this long. Maybe not ever like this. Do you inevitably, whether it's 6, 12, 18, 24 months, sometime rates are going to tick back up and normalize away from historic lows? Do you think that's going to curb competition at all, or just ever so slightly? Or do you think it's going to, speak specifically to Atlanta, the market you probably know the best? Do you think it's just going to continue to be blazing fire?
I think so. This is my onset of things. So I think the Fed would probably not raise interest rates 200 basis points, because that would just create just wildfire,
panic and gridlock,
panic and everything. Yeah. So I would think they will creep up, but it's still, since we're at a historically low, it's not going to affect that many people. And then as inflation rises, that means your jobs and what you're demanding as far as salary is going to increase as well. So I do see an upkeep and an uptick of, hey, I think next spring and summer is still going to be like blazing hot. I think you see a slowdown right now because buyers are just tired. They're like, "Hey, I'm foregoing my inspection period. I'm putting $30,000 in earnest money, and I still can't win this property." So you have buyers that are probably like, "Okay, forget it. I don't want to be in the market anymore." So that's when you see that slowdown. But as the kids go back to school, August has always been a slow month. So they're like, I see people posting on Instagram, "I told you guys, the market is going to slow down." It's August, man. People on vacation, people going to school. So I was like, okay, whatever you want to say, whatever your philosophy is fine. But I think as you get into next year, the spring and summer, people are going to be like, okay, I want to find a house. The rates are probably going to go up after this summer, because that's just where economics and the fundamentals are going to say. Hopefully, this Delta variant doesn't keep doubling and going where it needs to go. So I think all that's going to play in. It's going to be a wild time of like really being certain what your business plan is. Me personally, I feel all my single family inventory, I want to have it done by next summer, and then just sit back and see what's going to happen. As far as the moratorium, I tell people, hey, you have to advertise, you have to go through the foreclosure processes. The mortgage companies do not want to have a lot of foreclosures, so they're going to try to do whatever workouts they can try to do. So that's going to be a 6 to 9 month process. So any inventory that you think that people are behind, you're not going to see that until after spring or summer of next year. So that's not going to affect the market where you're going to just see thousands of inventory coming to the market. And REOs and foreclosures, it's just not going to happen, because before that even happens, people are going to buy NPLs, or they're going to buy the inventory from the courthouse steps. So the normal person like you and me will never see that inventory. So just like what it was like 2019, 2018, all this quote unquote shadow inventory that's out there. Will we ever get that shadow inventory? So no. So that's just my philosophy. Is like, hey, I'm gonna go balls to the wall with my single family. End of next summer, sit back and see what happens. While also, hey, locking in long term debt at this historically low rate on my multifamily projects, getting those stabilized, and then just riding it out until we see what happens in the near future. So I think this time next year we'll have a better purview of what the
Yeah,
housing
I
market
think
is
you hit
going
the
to be.
nail on the head. There's just so much upside, so much to go before it starts to get a little weird, right? Rate wise, and that was a tough one. Uh, so yeah, I think there's so much runway. Everybody's going to be in good shape for a while. I'm gonna ask you to kind of boil down all of that knowledge into one nugget. So you're a mentor to many. Follow you on Instagram. It's at Real Estate by Cortney, right?
Courtney know you. Make sure the people know that.
That's
Courtney know
it.
you.
Cortney at Real Estate by Cortney. Follow the man. You put out great content, by the way. Instagram, of course, prioritizes, I guess, what you spend time stopping on. If it's 2 seconds versus 1 second, so I guess I stop a lot on your stuff because they feed it to me all the time. So always great insights and actionable advice there, my man. But if I asked you for one piece of golden advice on real estate investing tangent to multifamily properties, what would it be?
I would say be precautious. And the reason I say be precautious, like right now, you have that sense of urgency where you have to do something with your money because you're sitting on so much money. But be very precautious of where you place your money and interview if you're going to place it with someone to be able to earn double digit returns or earn money to be able to get passive income on your money. Ask them where they're investing their money. So I would say always just be cautious and be very careful and just be, I would say, mindful of, hey, this is an investment. It is an investment. You could take a risk in
Right.
losing money at that time, but trying to alleviate the risk factor of going into those investments. So I would say just slow down, be precautious, don't be so eager, and then just go into an investment where you feel safe and you're investing with someone that you think is a good counterparty and they actually know what you're doing. So that would be my advice.
I love it. Mr. Cortney Newmans, it is always a pleasure. I always learn a ton whenever I'm around you. So thanks for schooling me on the multifamily side of the fence. I really appreciate it.
I don't know how much schooling I did. I think you could find some more better caliber people that can talk at a very high level than me, but we'll bring those people on the show next
And,
time.
and always humble. That's the big thing, too. You're just a great dude. At Real Estate by Cortney, know you in there. Cortney. At Real Estate by Cortney. Follow Cortney. Thanks so much. This has been an episode of The Real Estate of Things, expert insights and analysis on real estate investing. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.